we're more motivated with and encouraged with. And usually when we learn in this mindset, we tend to remember what we learned better.
So one thing that we're trying to build by having a growth mindset is a sense of independence for teenagers. Because one big problem that a lot of parents might forget about, and that a problem that teens might face as they leave high school and go into college, is that during high school, maybe they're a little too dependent on their parents, and they don't figure things out for themselves. What do they like? How do they manage their own time? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage parents to let go a little bit so that teenagers can actually learn these skills and be more self-sufficient and reliant after they leave high school. So that's one benefit of independence, developing the skills related to it. It builds responsibility and self-reliance, and that's something that will follow teenagers throughout the entirety of their lives. And it's something that they want to get started developing as soon as possible because they're going to be using it relatively soon. Sooner than you think. I can say that the last 4 years have gone by pretty quickly, even though I expected high school life to last a lot longer than it seems to have. And this relates a lot to the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation that 16 has mentioned. There's a kind of association in that teenagers who have developed a lot of independence tend to have intrinsic motivation. They're motivated by themselves. They can find things that they want to do and be passionate about them more so than teenagers who have been told what to do by other people, whether it's their parents, their peers, or someone else. I'm not sure who. So other benefits of developing independence include self-understanding, which is a very good thing to have in teenagers. It's a little awkward to leave high school and then realize, wow, I don't know anything about myself. And lastly, it helps develop healthy relationships between yourself and other people, whether that be with your friends, your family, or strangers, making new friends. And that's something that a lot of parents I know are concerned about for their children, and something that teens definitely do want to develop. And these are all very related to independence, and that's something we want to help teens develop in any way we can.
Independence really helps with healthy relationships because once you know who you are and you understand what kind of a person you are in a friendship or a relationship, then you know sort of what you need from other people and you are able to help other people better.
So, for example, I just thought of if you know that in your friendships or in your other relationships, like you're more of a giver, you like to dedicate a lot of time on other people, you like to say sweet things, do kind things, you're a helper, then yeah, it's just in relationships, like we learn to be more independent and know like our boundaries too. So that's what we mean by in healthy relationships, we realize our own, how we should be independent and try to be more independent in a more healthy way. Okay, so that's all very good, a lot about independence. How do we actually achieve it? As teenagers, these are the things that first came up to our minds. So there are activities that we can do to feel more empowered and independent. For example, personally, I really like music, and inspired by the pop songs that I dare not look back at. When I was a 12-year-old, like I started to learn guitar because I really liked it, and to write songs and stuff. And activities like that made me feel like I was doing something that I was passionate about, and that really gave me a sense of identity and independence. Like I am doing this because I love it, and I am an independent individual in that. Another point that we try to make is self-management, which includes a lot of things, including like time management. I know that as seniors in our high schools, like we have finals coming up next week, so how do we plan our time well in the 2-week interval, like day by day, so that we achieve what we want to achieve? And having the ability to do that is a sign of independence, or so we believe. The idea of independent is like closely related to trust, especially for teenagers, because in order for us to have independence over our own schedule, choosing what we want to do, we need a little bit of trust from parents. So parents, I mean, just me personally, my mom's in the audience, so I'm going to say this. Me personally, like, I really like it when my parents let go a little bit and just believe that I can get to where I want to be. Like, for example, today I actually had just very sad afternoon, kind of, because I did not do that well on my English essay, which is like the most important essay of the semester. But they would comfort me and just be like, it's okay. Instead of pushing me to do more so that I can achieve more, but rather like letting go and trusting that even though I make like little mistakes on the way or encounter failures, I'll still be able to stand up and achieve the things I want to.
Yeah. And I also have a story. This past week I was at the East Coast visiting some colleges and auditioning for their music programs. And about a month or two ago, when I told my mom about this, she was okay with me going, and she was gonna go with me, and she did go with me. My dad did too. And when I told her about this, she was like, okay, you're gonna book the flights. And I was like, I don't know how to book a flight. And she told me, oh, you can search it up then. And she didn't walk me through a lot of it. She hardly even helped. And it was really nice for her to, for me to know that she trusted that I was gonna make the right decisions on which flights to do, and to like be able to manage my schedule of the trip, the college trip. And now I have more confidence in my flight booking skills.
So once you've developed some independence, what exactly can you do with it? And one answer that we came up with during our discussions was exploration. And this applies to quite a few things. It applies to exploration about yourself, which we'll get into more later, but what we're talking about more of now is exploring how you want to relate to the world. And how you do this is basically you be open-minded, and what we're trying to encourage is for teens to find their own interests rather than having someone else encourage them to pursue a certain interest. And so tips for doing this are being open-minded, not necessarily writing something off just because it's not something you've tried. For example, I have zero interest in going into medicine, but if I was offered, say, an internship to work at a hospital as a assistant nurse or something, I would probably take the chance because it's a way to increase my worldview. It's trying something new, and I might actually find an interest that I didn't have before, whether or not I pursue it. So that's an example of taking opportunities, which is something we strongly encourage. And this last point, it applies just as much now as it will later when children go off to college. But experiencing parts of the world, because Cupertino is a little bit of a bubble. The world isn't necessarily a place where the population is almost entirely Asian, and the community is exactly like you. So it's a good experience to recognize that there are more parts of the world than just Cupertino. There are different types of communities. It's good to have experience with those, especially going into college and leaving it.
Just like one small example for this, I know a few friends from my high school who went to different countries for an exchange program last year. There was this girl who is actually my very good friend. She went to France for a year and went to school there, spoke French because she was very interested in the language, the literature. And she came back telling me and our other friends that she just realized, even though Palo Alto is such a outspoken place, liberal, open-minded, we see ourselves as so open-minded. But like when she came back from France, she realized that we are kind of, even though we're very open-minded, like it's still difficult for us to imagine a different kind of lifestyle, like of people of different countries, and actually having that experience really opened up her eyes. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a few things that are important to explore in your lifetime, especially as high school students, because we have our parents to have, like, you guys have our backs, right? So we have the opportunity to take risks and explore ourselves and see what values we have, see what kind of goals that we want to set for maybe the week or for the school year or even for the next 5 years of our lives. And it's also important to see what hobbies, interests, and passions that you have, and to see what you are like in different kinds of relationships, whether this is friendships or family relationships or even romantic relationships. And there's also self-expression, which some people still struggle with, and some people might know how to express themselves, but it's important to see whether you are the kind of person who needs to talk about themselves or write about themselves or, maybe sing or create art. And also it's important for us to find our background, especially in the Bay Area where the culture is so rich and everyone's pretty much bicultural in this area, so yeah.
So self-reflection. I've noticed along the way that, I don't know if you guys noticed, but our exploration slides go from more external exploration, like these are the things that I want to do in order to broaden my passions. And as the slides go on, we become, like, we pull it back, and then right now we have just like self-reflection to explore who we are inside. So a couple things that we want to emphasize is that it's good to sometimes take the time to analyze how we feel. So today I had, hypothetically, I'm not actually that kind of person. Okay, so say that I had a really big argument with my friend where I felt very defensive, agitated, and I said some things that I wouldn't have wanted to say. Then I could go back home, find some silent time and just think, why did I say that? Like, how did I actually feel? What part of my value system motivated those actions, and how have I hurt other people? And having that, these questions going on in your head really can make a person more self-aware and know where they are so that they can build healthier relationships, have a strong sense of self-identity, all that. Yeah, it's very important to be open-minded to other people as well as yourself. So if you have these thoughts going on in your mind, don't shut them down. Just be like, hey, what is this? Why do I think this way? And how does that reflect my values, my goals, etc.?
Press the button. Here's the button. Okay. So we've talked a lot about how teens can grow, and what we're gonna take a step back and kind of go back to the starting point. Because a lot of what we've talked about stems from having independence, having the freedom to explore yourself, having the tools to be able to do that. But something that a lot of teens lack, and which is holding them back from doing this, is something really basic, and that's actually trust between themselves and, in this case, their parents, but it's also trust between themselves and other people. They have a hard time developing and keeping that trust, and we're trying to remedy that with this presentation a little bit. So some things to keep in mind about trust. This is especially relevant when talking about building independence, because independence isn't something that comes really naturally to a lot of people. It's a very difficult skill to develop, and it's important to know that it's going to start off slow. You shouldn't expect results within a week. That's asking probably a little way too much. But if you are patient with your teen, you give them your trust, you allow them to develop their own independence, you will find that in the long run, they're going to reap a lot of benefits, and you're going to be very glad that you chose to trust them a little bit instead of controlling them to a more extreme point. So, and this applies to both sides. Being trustworthy is very key in this relationship, because it's a little hard to maintain trust, and I understand that it's extremely hard to let your teens have their independence if they somehow break your trust. But that goes for both sides as well. At some point in the relationship, some people are going to make promises, and it's important to remember these promises and follow up on them instead of just having them be empty words that you said to fulfill a certain purpose. And it's very hard to develop trust, so we're going to go a little bit deeper into this. We're going to talk about communication, because this is one of the key elements of building trust.
Okay. So with communication, there's something that we really believe in, which is nonviolent communication, which is very important, not just, especially for when you disagree with someone, whether it's your peer or your parent or your teenager. So basically, nonviolent communication is when you try really hard and you don't let your feelings get in the way of telling someone what is happening. So instead of making a quick assumption and saying that, you know, someone doesn't want you to be happy, maybe you keep in mind that they're trying to do what's best for you. Also, it's important when you communicate to compliment people. This is good, even with parents and teenagers, sometimes we forget with the people that we're closest to tell them nice things and make them feel good about themselves. And it's especially important to focus on the good things as more than the bad things sometimes, because focusing on the bad things can really hurt our mindset sometimes. And always be empathizing with the other person, because maybe there's something that they're thinking or something that's happening to them that you are not aware of.
Yeah, okay. Since the concept of like nonviolent communication is quite abstract, we're going to go into detail about a few examples that might just show what it actually is.
So we're going to bring up our advisor, Eddie, for
Because he's an actor.
example.
Let me just stand in the back here.
Really? Okay.
We'll give it a whole panorama.
Okay.
I think more people can probably hear me from this standpoint.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we'll first give an example of violent communication, of maybe something that he's not happy about that I'm doing.
Joy, you came back from the party so late last night. How can you be so irresponsible? It's like you got me so worried, and I can't believe you do something like that. I can't believe you're always acting. It's like you never win.
Okay. So if he makes assumptions like that and tells me how I'm behaving and how I'm thinking, then that makes me less willing to talk back to him and tell him what actually happened. Maybe I had to help a friend get home who couldn't find a ride, or something else. So now he'll do an example of nonviolent communication.
Joy, you came back from the party a little late last night. I don't know, exactly what happened. I understand that you're a kid, you want to have fun. That's totally fine. Just know that sometimes when this kind of thing happens, I get worried. I feel sometimes very frustrated that maybe we had an agreement and we wasn't followed through on. And I'd just like for you to be able to think more about these agreements that you've made in the past. So would you be willing to do so?
Okay. No, but see how the nonviolent communication way is much more calm, and although it's definitely not an easy way to communicate, it's something that takes getting used to and it takes practice, but it really helps both sides understand each other without getting really angry at each other, and getting into an argument that might not be necessary, is probably not necessary, and can be talked through with more calmly. Yeah.
I'll just say something. So the key idea here is sort of like empathy, right? Like assuming that the other person has good intentions, which they probably in most cases do, and assuming that, of course, like not assuming, but knowing that other people's feelings are like valid. So instead of making the assumption, you must be so irresponsible, like you totally made a mistake and you got me so worried. It's like the "you got me so worried" part is especially like hurtful. It could be hurtful to someone because they are making you feel some way. So that's sort of like making them feel guilty. Just things like that, like using empathy and stating how you feel. Like, this is how I feel, this is how I am, and I'm hoping that maybe next time you could do this a little bit differently so that you'll be safe and we can have a good relationship kind of thing. Yeah.
So one thing that communication also helps a lot with is gratitude. This is more general. This is gratitude towards both people and towards events in general. And I know that a lot of parents, including mine sometimes, feel like their teens aren't giving them any gratitude at all, and they get very frustrated. No offense. So what's important to note is that gratitude isn't supposed to be a very one-time thing where on November 25th or 8th or something.
The fourth Thursday.
That one. Yeah, it's not something that you say, that you give once a year on Thanksgiving, and then 2 months later, and then 5 months after that, and then at Thanksgiving again. It's supposed to be a more consistent routine, and hopefully ideally gratitude is expressed both actively and passively, and you are aware that it's there. And it's kind of hard to do that, which is why developing communication skills is pretty necessary. But speaking more generally, developing what we've talked about today also helps a lot when you're trying to grow personally. This is more towards teens, but this also applies to parents as well. Gratitude towards events is something that people generally don't do, I feel. For example, if I went through some extreme failure, I flunked my math test, which is unheard of because I'm Asian. Most people would take that as a very big hit and probably not come out of their room for 2 weeks. But what we're trying to encourage instead is for teens or anyone who experiences failure like this to pause, step back a moment, think about why did this happen? How can you prevent this from happening again? What can you take away from this? And how can you make this experience better you as a person? And if you can do that and actually take something away from it, then it's more likely that you feel gratitude for what happened to you, even if you don't like that it actually happened. So we're trying to focus on growing from your failures rather than just berating yourself over and over again, saying, "No, I'm a failure," because of them. That's the positive. That's true with the next point as well. This next one, be grateful for each other. Especially in hard times, it's important to keep this in mind, that gratitude goes both ways, like a lot of things that we talked about, like trust. And it helps a lot. My relationship with my parents hasn't been that great the last 4 years, but lately it's been getting better, even though I've been completely destroyed by college apps in senior year. So I'm very grateful for my parents. I hope they know that, though they're not here today, so I can say whatever I want. Be grateful, especially when it's hard. It's like the last one. In hard times is when you need gratitude and the support of other people most. And in a lot of situations, people from this area, or people in general, just won't understand that or won't have the support they need. And if through developing these skills, knowing how to express gratitude for other people and for what's happened to you in your entire life, you begin to develop humility and selflessness, which are pretty positive qualities. Pretty positive. And this usually leads to more fulfillment and happiness than you would have if you were not grateful for anything. If you just thought, wow, everything must be perfect in my life. Yes. Nothing must go wrong. Okay.
Okay, so developing social skills. Let's see. Obviously, we've seen so many movies about the shy middle school kid, awkward, and sort of like, in a big cafeteria where everyone's like super popular, and then they're just like on the side and just being like, where do I fit in? So it's important to, in those cases, as well as I believe in like when you're a teenager, when you're an adult, and so forth, to put yourself out there, to break out of that shell, because that shell is invisible. It doesn't exist, right? It's not a physical barrier. It's most likely to exist in your mind. Of course, your feelings are valid, but to overcome that fear of making a mistake is quite important. So, if you met someone, and how do you bond with them? Well, maybe something to do, like a conversation starter, would to be find common passions. So, I'm just hypothetically, if I love coding, and that's my thing, I've been doing it forever, maybe start a little conversation about that and see like where they are at it, and can bond over that. I think this is like basically common sense that, just reiterating. Be open-minded to new ideas. And discomfort is not bad. Discomfort means that you're like literally out of your comfort zone, right? Just challenging yourself a little bit. It's important for parents and also for kids themselves to remember that not everyone is the same. People approach others in different ways. For parents, it's important to encourage your kid, just get out there and do what's fun, do what they want to do, because I mean they're young and yeah. Awkward encounters are not a bad thing, as we've said, and keep meeting friends throughout your lifetime. It's kind of like learn new things from different people. Yeah.
Oh wait, sorry, going back. For me personally, I'm pretty introverted sometimes. So this past year, I've made it a goal whenever I go out to events and I don't have any friends around me, is to at least try to talk to one person, or like, you know, set a goal, maybe try to get along with someone and be open instead of staying on my phone in the corner and only doing what's required. So just, it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but it's really great once you do get started and once you do start making friends.
So this is going to be the last slide of our presentation, and this is kind of a checklist and kind of a reality check for literally everyone in the audience. What we've talked about is a lot of personal growth. There's a lot about personal growth, both for parents and for teenagers. And we focus a lot on the bond between parents and teenagers. And this is kind of a test for yourself to see just how strong that bond is and what can you do to improve it. So what we encourage everyone to do is take a picture of this slide or memorize it, whatever floats your boat. Ask yourself these questions, and if your answer is no or it's negative to a few of these, then you have a goal to work towards. And we hope that's something, if the only thing, you take away from our presentation.
Take
Click. We can just keep this up here. Yes.
And like
Let's take the
for this slide, it's kind of, I like to think of it as kind of like a petri dish, right? I don't know if you guys remember that from like high school biology or whatever, but like you have a petri dish where you can grow bacteria and the bacteria will multiply. If our goal is for the bacteria to prosper and to succeed in this environment, then there needs to be a strong like nutrition and support and all that. So for teens and as individuals in general, for us to get where we want to be and live a cliche, fulfilling life, like we need a support system. So this is really about what conditions we need in order to focus on ourselves, to grow, to have healthy relationships.
A few things to note. This is not an exhaustive list. Just because you answer, if you can answer yes to all these questions, that still doesn't mean that your relationship is perfect or that there's nothing you can do. Just keep that in mind. This is still just a status check.
This is sort of just
This is a starting
going back.
point.
It's almost a self-reflection thing with your relationships with your teenagers or with even your friends sometimes.
All right, we have half an hour. Ask us questions.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. I love how you share because, you know, when you talk, I listen, but then it really gives me some anger when I hear some personal